The cameras were rolling. The microphones were live. Volodymyr Zelensky was standing in Sofia on an official state visit, and he was angry. Not quietly diplomatic, not carefully measured. Angry. He raised his voice at the Bulgarian head of state in front of journalists, officials, and everyone watching. He said, "This is definitely a war." He said, "God forbid this tragedy reaches you and you are in my position. Would you then tell Putin, please take Bulgarian territory?" The room was watching, the world was watching, and the Bulgarian standing across from him did not flinch, did not apologize, did not walk back a single word. He had said the conflict had no military solution. He had said more weapons do not solve the problem. He had said diplomacy and de-escalation were the only rational path. And he held that position while Zelensky screamed at him on live television. That man just became the most powerful person in Bulgaria. Stay with me. Because what just happened in Bulgaria is not simply the story of one election in a small Eastern European country. It is the latest signal in a pattern that Brussels has been watching with growing alarm for years and has so far failed to reverse. And the specific man at the center of it, his history, his positions, and the moment he stood unmoved while a wartime president lost his composure in front of the cameras, tells you everything about why Bulgaria just made the choice it made. 9 elections, 10 years. That's the rhythm Bulgaria has lived under since 2014. Every time the ballots were counted, another coalition crumbled, another caretaker government took over, and another promise of stability dissolved before it could even take root. No party could hold a majority. Cabinet talks collapsed as quickly as they began. The average coalition lasted barely 5 months before it fell apart. The result, a country trapped in permanent campaign mode, governed by short-term deals and backroom bargains, while real problems festered. Trust in parliament has collapsed to historic lows. Only 12% of Bulgarians say they have any faith left in the parties that run the National Assembly. Meanwhile, Transparency International's Corruption Perception Index for Bulgaria dropped from 44 to 36 out of 100 between 2014 and 2023, the lowest in the European Union. Oligarchs and patronage networks have flourished in the chaos, financing parties, blocking reforms, and turning government into a revolving door for the same tired faces. For ordinary Bulgarians, this isn't just about failed leaders or broken promises. It's about empty paychecks, rising prices, and a sense that no one in Brussels or Sofia is listening. The old establishment lost its grip. The search for a new kind of leadership began. Rumen Radev was never built for ceremony. He was built for command. Born in Dimitrovgrad, with a gold medal in mathematics, top of his class at the Air Force Academy, a fighter pilot, commander, and by 2014, Major General of Bulgaria's Air Force. Over 1,400 flight hours in the cockpit. He learned early that calm under fire is not just a virtue, it's survival. That same discipline carried him through 2 terms as president, a role meant to be symbolic, boxed in by the Constitution, but never truly powerless. In a country where trust in Parliament withered to 12%, Radev's approval quietly climbed to 45%, then 52%, then higher. The July 2023 confrontation with Zelensky did not rattle him. It made him a symbol, the man who stood his ground, who said, "There is no military solution. More and more weapons will not solve it." On January 23, 2026, Radev did the unthinkable. He resigned. He was Bulgaria's first president to step down voluntarily since the end of communism. He walked away from the comfort of the presidency to enter what he called the arena of dirty politics. Within weeks, Progressive Bulgaria was born, a coalition built on anti-corruption, national sovereignty, and a promise to put Bulgarian interests before Brussels decrees. Polls surged overnight to 33%, then 31%, then 30%. In a fractured landscape, that was a landslide. This was not a leap into the unknown. It was a calculated move from the man who refused to blink, turning a decade's exhaustion into a mandate for something entirely new. Barely a day after the July 2023 broadcast, European headlines locked in their verdict. Some called him Bulgarian Orban. The phrase landed like a gavel, short, sharp, and loaded. Politico ran with mauls, Yahoo labeled it a public spat, and the photo editors did the rest. Zelenski, animated, hand slicing the air. Radev, stone-faced, arms crossed, unmoved. The story was set before the facts could even breathe. Nationalist, populist, pro-Russian. The shorthand did its work, flattening a decade of Bulgarian exhaustion and turning a televised argument into a morality play for Brussels. But labels like these do more than fill column inches. They decide who gets to speak for a country and who gets written off as a problem. In Hungary, Viktor Orban spent 14 years at the helm, rewriting laws, consolidating power, and clashing with the EU at every turn. Radev had 2 terms as a ceremonial president, no party machinery, no media empire, no history of gutting the courts. The only thing they share is a stubborn insistence on national sovereignty, and even that comes from different ground. Orban is ideological, a fist in Brussels' face. Radev is pragmatic, born of gas bills and empty wallets. European media did not wait for nuance. They saw a leader who questioned sanctions, who warned that more weapons would only drag the war out, who asked why Bulgarians should pay the price for decisions from Brussels. The Orban tag stuck because it fit a pattern: sovereignty, skepticism, and a refusal to play along. But for millions in Bulgaria, the real story was not about copying Hungary. It was about a man who said on camera what everyone else was too afraid to admit. There is no military solution, and honesty beats theater every time. Radev's platform is not a slogan. It's a checklist, delivered in public, repeated in interviews, hammered home in every speech. Start with the war. There is no military solution. More and more weapons will not solve it. That's not just a soundbite from the July confrontation. It's a line he's held since the first days of the invasion. Bulgaria, he insists, cannot afford to empty its own stockpiles for a distant war. Every missile sent east is one less for the country's own defense. Every arms shipment is a gamble with national security. While Brussels and Washington demand solidarity, Radev talks about readiness, about what happens if Bulgaria is left exposed while the headlines move on. Energy is where the numbers bite. More than 30% of Bulgaria's gas still comes from Russia, even after a decade of EU diversification plans. Sanctions, Radev warns, do not just punish Moscow, they punish Bulgarian families. Gas bills soared by 45% in 2024. The promise of cheap American LNG never materialized. Instead, factories cut shifts and households rationed heat. Radev's question is blunt. Why should Bulgarian pensioners pay the price for policies drafted in Brussels? He does not call for surrender. He calls for negotiation, for bilateral contracts, for a seat at the table when decisions are made about Bulgarian lives. This is not Orban's crusade. Orban swings at Brussels with ideology and spectacle. Radev comes with facts, budgets, and the quiet anger of a country tired of being told what's realistic. His sovereignty isn't a slogan, it's a demand for accountability. For a foreign policy that serves Sofia, not just Strasbourg. For energy bills that make sense in levs, not in headlines. For a defense policy that keeps Bulgaria safe, not just compliant. That's the line he draws. And for millions, it's the only line that matters. Sofia's city center didn't just fill, it surged. 250,000 people, young and old, packed the boulevards in May 2023, shouting for a future they could actually afford. Telegram groups buzzed with instructions, where to meet, what to chant, which streets to hold. At the front, Generation Z organizers, faces lit by phone screens, carried cardboard signs and megaphones. Their message cut through the noise. We pay the price, they pocket the raise. A university student, barely 20, stood on a bench and yelled, "We're not here for Brussels, we're here for Bulgaria." The energy was raw, contagious, impossible to ignore. For the first time in years, the crowd was too big and too young to be written off as just another flash mob. Brussels watched, and so did every party boss in Sofia. This was legitimacy you couldn't manufacture. Brussels is watching Bulgaria with clenched teeth. The European Commission has its levers, sanctions, funding, the rule of law mechanism, and the ever-present 2% NATO defense quota. Radev's government refuses to play along. On sanctions, he demands carve-outs for Bulgaria's gas and oil, arguing that blanket embargoes crush families before they dent the Kremlin. On defense, Brussels insists on more spending, more arms for Ukraine, and strict accounting. Radev's answer is simple. Not one missile will leave if it weakens Bulgaria's own defenses. The EU's threat is clear. Miss the quota and lose cohesion funds. Stall on judicial reform, and the money stops. Just ask Hungary or Poland. This isn't just a policy dispute. It is a collision course, with Bulgaria daring to test how far sovereignty can go before Brussels pulls the plug. Right now, Europe's old narratives are splitting at the seams. Bulgaria's revolt isn't about left or right. It's about sovereignty, sanity, and survival. Radev refuses escalation, demands diplomacy, and rejects Orban's theatrics. The establishment calls this dangerous, but voters call it reality. The question is, who gets to define Europe's future?